This is not a referendum on one guy in one office. This is a referendum on us and who are we going to be to each other. This is one of those moral moments in our nation that's going to define the character of our country. And this is a week where I will not let the slaughter of our fellow citizens just disappear within the next media cycle.
Senator Cory Booker in Iowa Friday night. He joins us live from Dubuque this morning. Senator Booker, thank you for joining us this morning. You've been pretty clear all week long that this issue is a matter of morality, not politics. But I guess the big question is, how do you transform a moral moment into practical action? You know, President Obama spoke in moral terms after Newtown. He sang Amazing Grace after the massacre in South Carolina. But Washington didn't act in a meaningful way. How can you succeed where President Obama failed?
Well, it can't be a me, it has to be a we. We have a nation right now where people are feeling the fear penetrating our culture. From talking to even Latino leaders in the media telling me about how their family members are afraid to speak Spanish in public now. I have had teachers telling me about what kind of surrender is it in our society where we tell our children basically we can't protect you, so we're going to teach you in school how to duck and cover and shelter in place. More and more Americans are seeing that this is a matter of freedom in this country. Will we be a nation free from fear, free from violence, free from a culture where mass shootings happen almost with a regularity where it's happening every day? And so I think this is the time to lead and take responsibility, to be a lot bolder than just small steps towards safety and security. And I think that I can be a leader with Americans activating and engaging on this issue that actually pass meaningful, common sense gun safety that makes our children, our families, our churches, mosques, our shopping centers safe.
You say boldness is the answer. You want to call for gun licensing, nationwide gun licensing, but how can you pass that when even background checks, which 90% of gun owners, according to some polls, support, can't get through the United States Senate?
Well, again, I think it's a matter of leadership, presidential leadership. I hear a lot of the pundits say that if Donald Trump actually took responsibility for this moment and stepped forward and said this is something we should do, that it would move Mitch McConnell and a lot of other folks. We need a president that's willing to drive forward on this issue and hold people accountable. I think that we can make this an issue really in our nation where people who have sworn an oath really helped be a part of a government that's primary responsibility is to keep people safe, that we can begin to hold them accountable. And if they fail to be accountable, we can begin to win seats, flip, in the same way the NRA in the past has been able to make such a big difference in elections, so much so that many Republicans are afraid of them. We can flip that around and make them afraid of the overwhelming majorities of Americans that will hold them accountable. That's the kind of tough leadership we need right now that's going to make sure that people who do not step up to protect this nation pay a price for that.
You say that gun control is part of the answer, also taking on the rhetoric of hate. And here's a part of how you talked about that this week.
Because if the answer to the question, do racism and white supremacy exist, is yes, then the real question isn't who is or isn't a racist, but who is and isn't doing something about it. There's no neutrality in this fight. You are either an agent of justice or you are contributing to the problem.
You made it pretty clear you think President Trump is on the wrong side of this fight. Does that hold for his supporters too? And I guess my question is, how do you call out President Trump on the issue of white supremacy and racism without alienating his supporters?
Well, that's, I guess, really what I've been trying to say. This impotent simplicity of who is and who isn't a racist is really not the question. If we have racism in our country and we are all in this together and we believe that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, what are you doing about that injustice? It's not enough to say I'm not a racist in America. If racism exists, you need to be anti-racist. Same thing with anti-Semitism. I can't sit idly by if my Jewish brothers and sisters are facing that kind of violence and that kind of evil. We are all in this together.
So
if
someone is supporting President Trump, they're not anti-racist?
No, I'm not saying that. And again, this is the kind of slicing and dicing that often tries to pit us against each other. If we have a nation where someone doesn't feel comfortable, where someone could be a victim of a violent attack, and remember, white supremacy and white supremacist attacks are on the rise. The majority of our terrorist attacks in this country since 9/11 have been right-wing extremist groups or white supremacist groups. And so if this kind of strains exist in our society, we all Americans should say, this is not who we are, and we have something to do about it. Remember, King said more eloquently to me, he said, what we have to repent for in this day and age is not just the vitriolic words and violent actions of the bad people, it's the appalling silence and inaction of the good people.
Does the government
That's
need more?
my point.
Does the government need more tools to take this on as well?
Absolutely. I mean, look what we did in response to radical, as the president says, radical Islamic terrorism. We have moved hundreds of billions of dollars to deal with those terrorist threats coming from abroad. And now we see that, as I said, the majority of our terrorist threats coming homegrown right-wing extremists, white supremacists. Are we doing that same thing to deal with this? We have a lot more to do at Homeland Security, FBI, a lot more resources we need to bring to bear to make our synagogues safe, to make our nightclubs safe, to make our shopping centers and Walmarts safe from this kind of active terrorism. And the problem we have is in the White House is not somebody who's stepping up and saying we're going to deal with this, but the resources, energy. We have somebody who's actually adding to it, who is contributing to this kind of divisiveness and these kind of dark forces in our nation through his own rhetoric, through the way he talks about Americans, through the bigotry that passes through his lips that incites white supremacists to literally use his language in their chat rooms to further activate this kind of hate. We have so much work to do in this nation on these issues, and we have a president who is failing us through everything he's doing, and worse than that, he's contributing to the problem.
You're in Iowa. Most of the Democratic candidates are there this week. Got to ask you a political question. The latest poll coming out shows you're down to 1% in Iowa from 3% back in April, according to the Monmouth poll. How do you break out of the bottom of the pack? Is the clock ticking for you?
Well, I'm actually surprised that these polls where the margin of error is so high is capturing so much attention when history shows that the polls aren't predictive. The kind of things that are predictive is where we're leading. We're leading on endorsements from Iowa state legislators. We're leading on endorsements from mayors and city council people. More than that, we're building an organization that folks around here, from the Des Moines Register to others, say the best organizations on the ground are mine and Senator Warren's. You know this from past polls, and people like John Kerry won, who's polling at 4%, won Iowa. So we are very confident in how we're doing. We're getting big crowds at our events. We're getting tons of people to sign commitment to caucus cards, and we still have 6 months to go. This is still a long way out. As a guy who used to play football, I call this August double days before we even get to preseason games. This is a long way to go before we get to the game time, so to speak. And we're doing the work to build a winning campaign here in Iowa, and I believe we will win.
We will be watching as you head to game time. Senator Cory Booker, thanks very much for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.